going on, YouTube? Today we're going to do something a little bit differently, and today we are going to talk about the E30. And maybe you're looking to buy one, maybe you want some tips, what to look at, what to look for, and so on and so forth. So we're going to jump right into it. There's tons of different models of these cars that are all the same body style, and we're going to go through a little bit of the pros and cons of each of them. Ideally, if you're going to buy an E30 and get the full E30 experience, you're really going to want to buy probably either the 325i or the 325is. If you're lucky and have the funds, then you can buy the E30 M3, which have gone significantly up in value. But we're going to go through the red car here, which is a 325ES. Now the difference between the E and the ES is the ES came with a limited slip differential. The E does not have a limited slip differential, and neither does your 4-cylinder E30s. So like your 318s aren't going to come with a limited slip. And it all just depends what you're going for. If you're going to build a stance car or something along those lines, then maybe you don't care. Maybe you don't want the limited slip differential, because you know you're not going to be really beating on it and driving it really hard when it's this far from the ground. So the E models came with a 2.7 liter engine, which really looks about the same as the 2.5 liter engine, with the exception that it has a different head and the intake doesn't flow quite as well. But looking at the engine bay, the only thing that's really going to give it away is all this stuff up here, which is all your emissions and stuff like that. So with that being said, this one is was a four-door 325i. Obviously now it's got the LS in it, and it's not quite an E30, which, well, I mean, it's an E30, but it's not. It doesn't have the. I don't have the original engine anymore. So, a couple main points you're going to want to look at, and differences, I suppose. You can see in this one. This one has the sport seats, which has a little adjuster down here to allow this to come out, and they're a little bit more of a bucket seat and hold you in a little better. Now, this car here just has the regular E30 seats in it, which, as you can see, there's not really much of a bolster there, and really nothing down there that's too exciting. So to me, I don't really mind the four doors, because if you look at the back window on the four door, and it's a back window, but then you look at the rear window on the two door, and it's you could almost picture a door being there with the way the window is set up and everything. Another feature with the two doors that you may or may not know, some of them came with the butterfly windows. Not all of them have that. Kind of cool, as you get some airflow into the back seat there. And obviously, I got a bunch of stuff in my trunk, but toolkits, not really such a big deal. This one, I believe, has all the tools in it, so which is a neat feature if you're looking for a resale value in the future, considering these cars are going up in value. The paint on all the ones that I've personally owned and seen has really held up pretty good. The paint that BMW used on these cars really did well with age. With that being said, there is a few key spots you're going to want to look at. Mainly, at least in my experience, I've found that, and I can show you better probably on this car, because I repaired it on this car. The wheel wells, front wheel wells down here, tend to rust out. And then also the shock purchase up here. You can see this one's got some surface rust starting up here, which could potentially be a problem in the future. Replace all that. And then also the spring perches on these cars can have a tendency to get really rusty and get really bad. So that's really the only main problems I've had. Also, where the jack point is, where the subframe goes in, has a tendency to get pretty rusty down here. Other than that, I have seen a few that have the rear wheel wells all rusty and chewed up, but not very many of them. So that's really about it. It just kind of depends what you're looking for in an E30. I don't mind the 2.7 liter because I'm eventually going to do a stroker with this, which is basically just putting the 885 head and intake from the 325i onto the 2.7 liter block, which gives you a little bit more RPM range. The 2.7 liter, it only revs to 5 grand versus the 2.5 liter that revs out to like 50 or 6,500 or something like that. This car, it was a one owner car. I'm the second owner. So this one's in really good shape, and you can tell by just how nice and clean everything looks in here. You can't really find too many of these nowadays. They've all been modified and messed with, which that also depends what you're looking for. Me, my personal preference, I like to find them as stock as possible because I want to do everything myself and not get into somebody else's project. Every now and again you'll find one up for sale that's got the M50 swap from the E36, or maybe you'll find one that has an LS swap in it for sale. I have seen a few turbocharged 2.5 liters for sale, but not very many. Really, other than that, there's really not too much to be concerned with if you're looking to get an E30. Nowadays, you're going to pay a little bit more for them. I think when I bought this car 5 years ago, I paid $500 for it, and it had 185,000 miles. It needed a center support bearing and just little odds and ends, but it didn't need much. And I drove it for 3 years before I pulled the engine and decided to put the LS1 in it. So this one is obviously in a lot better shape. There's virtually no rust on this car, and it was a one owner car, been well taken care of, well documented. So this car I paid $3,400 for. That's, in my opinion, that's pretty much where the market's at, between $3,000 and $4,000. You will see them for a lot more, or you will see them for a lot less. The ones that are a lot less nowadays tend to be really beat up and modified, or something's wrong with them. But just a matter of what you're looking for, really. Most of them are going to have your bottle cap rims on them. I've seen a few with the like the BBS weave wheels, but that's mainly on the 325 IS models. The 325 ES, I believe, has more of like, I think it's like a 293 limited slip in it, and then the 325 has like a 373 limited slip in it. At least that's what this car's got a 373 limited slip. The E30 M3s, I believe, came with a 410. So that's really all the main issues. So you're really going to want to look at your rear shock mounts and your rear spring perches when you're looking at the cars. Haven't really ever found too much rust in the engine bay. You're going to find a lot of them have the intake and the valve cover are all oxidized and not really pretty looking. Other than that, they really hold up well. This one, the dash is kind of cracked up, which may or may not be a big deal to some people. Me, it's not that big of a deal. I'm gonna pull it out and fix it anyway. So that's kind of the main thing with these cars. You know, the sunroof, some have a crank sunroof, some have an electric sunroof. It just depends what model and what option the guy put on it from when he bought it, or it's the person who bought it beforehand. There's a couple different front bumper options. As you can see, this one's got the sport bumper on it, which makes these like brake ducts that go into the wheel well there for brake cooling, and obviously this one does not have a bumper like that. The 325 IS will have more of like the Euro style bumper that won't have this big chrome lip on it, or if you have find like a Euro style one or something like that, it's not going to have, it'll have plastic bumpers front and rear. You know, just the little things, you know, all the things you want to look at when you're buying a car normally. And, you know, just a few E30 specific things like the spring perches and the rear shock mounts, and, you know, just take a good look at it when you're buying it. Even this one really isn't that rusty underneath of it. The body has some rust spots, but as far as the underneath and the chassis, it's pretty well cleaned. BMW did a good job with their undercoating on these cars, so for the most part you're going to find them, they're going to be pretty clean underneath. At least out of the three that I've owned, all of them have been pretty clean. If you get like a 90 or 91, it'll probably be an airbag car, and it won't have a steering wheel that looks like this. That's pretty much about it. I would stay away from the automatics just because they're automatics. I mean, what fun is that? Can't shift gears in an automatic. Well, you can, but it's not nearly as much fun. So really, if I was going and decided I wanted to buy an E30, and the things I would be looking for is I would be looking for a two-door, probably a 325i or a 325 IS model, which you're going to pay a little bit more for the I's and the IS versus like your 318s and the 325Es are on your lower end of the spectrum than like your 325Is, just because the I's have a little bit more performance and the IS is even a little bit above that. Not much, but a little bit above the I models. So two-door, if you can find a green one, green's a good color for them. I haven't seen a lot of green ones, so if you can find a green one, I would definitely buy the green one. Two-door, 5-speed, 325i or 325 IS. If you are looking to build, you know, more of a project, I would not stray away from a E model as long as it's like an ES. Or if you want to swap, you know, a limited slip differential into it, that's fine too. Then you can do the, you know, 318 or the 325E. But you know, you bolt ahead on this, and then you got 2.7 liter stroker, which is going to make more power than the 325i does stock. But that's also having to put money into it to do that, and just depends where you want to go with your build, or if you just want a good daily driver. So this car, I get about 27 miles to the gallon on the highway at 80 miles an hour. This one, I don't think I got quite as well. I think I was getting like 21 on the highway. But that's just, you know, the gearing in the car. I mean, this car runs at 2,500 RPM at 80 miles an hour. This one ran, you know, more at like 332. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if there's really too much more. Your IS would have came with a spoiler like this. This was added on by the guy that bought this from the factory. Seeing as how it's a one-owner car and I bought it from the original owner, he told me everything that he had gotten added on from the factory and all that. Like, this is a factory option, which I've never actually seen one with this on it until I bought this car, but it actually is pretty neat when you have the sunroof open and all that. Gonna look for the sport seats. I would definitely be looking for the sports seats. It's, you know, a better option than the other ones, especially if you're going to be doing any like autocross or track or aggressive driving with it, and you're not going to put race seats in it. So I would definitely look for the sports seats. And you know, I think that's about it. So for a quick recap here, put you up here. You know, you're going to want, which they made the E30 from, I think they made it from 84 to 91. So there's a pretty broad range. They made a lot of them, so there's a lot of them out there. It's just whether or not you can find a nice one that's still in good shape and hasn't been, you know, ragged all to hell and really beat up and modified, all goofy. But you know, I'd be looking for probably a later model, like a 89 to 91 325i or 325is. Definitely going to want the 5-speed. 2-door or 4-door, preferably the 2-door, but if you find a good 4-door, it really doesn't matter. It's still a good looking car, and they're really about the same size. Not much difference between the two of them. So that's, you know, you're going to want to look at the rear spring perches, rear shock mounts. You can take a look at the upper shock mounts in the front. In my experience, those are generally always pretty good. I haven't really seen too many issues with them. More than likely, you know, the intake will look all ratty because it's been oxidized and on the road for 30 years. But, and then, you know, just matters what your price point is. You know, for $5 grand, you could buy yourself, you know, a really nice E30. It's in good shape and may have a few modifications to it already, you know, like suspension and stuff like that, which isn't a big deal because that's just less money you have to spend down the road. Anything more than that, and they're probably asking way too much. Not that the car isn't probably worth it, but it's just, you know, I wouldn't pay top dollar for something that's probably not going to be worth as much down the road. With that being said, the price point, I mean, when I first started buying these cars 5 years ago, they were, you know, regularly, you know, $1,000 and under, and it was pretty easy to pick them up for less than that. Nowadays, they have gone up. I don't know how much more they will go up, but they are becoming more of a classic European sports car, depending on the model. I mean, obviously a 318 is not going to be worth as much as, you know, a 325is 10 years from now. So just a matter of what you want, what you're looking for, and yeah, I think that's just about it. So hopefully this gives you guys some help if you're looking to buy an E30. If not, if you have any questions that I didn't answer or would like me to answer, just leave them down in the comments below. And hit that subscribe button, like the video, and we will see you in the next one.